Thanks, Chris. And thanks, Chris, for, I guess, spearheading this private aged care sort of masterclass, and I guess the wider ambition is we're a strong believer in it as part of the solution to the problems. And a lot of our investment in the technology that we've been doing has been in this private aged care masterclass, having been led by our clients there. eevi itself, we're a care monitoring technologies business. So in the way that Carolyn's platform is the care planning, finance, rostering, scheduling, all the software you need to run your operations side, we build the hardware and infrastructure that goes into the village, and the cloud-based and application services then for monitoring what's going on with the residents. So it's that situational awareness in the village of what's going on with the resident, the carers, the service delivery, etc. I wanted to start with this quote, and Paul Brown won't mind me attributing it to him. When we first met with Paul back in 2019, he said, "Care systems are a main issue we struggle to nail. We are not just a residential aged care provider, nor just a home care operator, nor just a retirement village. There is no right system available to us." And I heard that echoed the Leadership Summit earlier this year by Byron and by Aaron. And they are, and we know that Anglicare are going through very much the same journey, if you like, and it still very much remains, like the model, a work in progress. So I want to sort of highlight that it's been very much a private care model, a model of care that's challenging not just the built forms and the financial models, but also the systems. Our journey started in this space really. To give you some context here, we worked with AO on the Newstead development back in 2015 to 2018, and it was then the leading model for integrated retirement community. And James was there at the time, and we spent thousands of hours talking to residents and staff and carers through design sprint processes to come up with the technologies that would facilitate this AO Newstead flagship development. And it was and remains a beautiful community. Still very much though to the old models of independent living on the top floors, assisted living 2 floors below, RAC 2 floors below that. Very siloed workflows, very siloed care models, and as a result, very siloed systems and data. So the PERS system, medical alarms upstairs, nurse call downstairs, the two didn't talk to each other. In fact, it was so segregated that if you were living in an apartment upstairs and wanted to, and your partner had to go into the residential aged care facility to visit them, you would have to go down the lift to the ground floor, cross the reception, and go up a separate lift to get into the residential aged care facility. So that was then the best models, but still really very, very siloed, right? After that, we started working with LDK, a completely different care model of one move promise, manifesting in any level of care anywhere. I'll talk to that a bit more. But it really did require us to re-architect the solution from the ground up. One system, we really bought into this idea that, one system that was flexible enough to deliver any level of care, and in different apartments for different people, but also as the care needs changed, we needed to be able to adapt the technologies that were being used. It demanded a much more modern sort of architecture than traditional, PERS or nurse call systems. So what does the right system look like? And it's hard to give you a really good view of this in 5 minutes, but it must feel like home. So there's no point in having traditional nurse call points and enunciators or thinking like that. That's not what they want. It must feel like a home. It must support any level of care. And by that I mean in one room, and we will have an independent living person who's got really no interest in seeing anything that looks like care in their apartment. They'll want a wearable, they'll want voice-activated services, etc. Right next door, we'll be delivering the highest levels of care to someone. They'll need bed, sleep patterns monitored, they'll need fall detection, they'll need motion movement, as well as all the regular alerting systems. So that's what I mean by any level of care, anywhere, super flexible, and that demands a flexible and modular system. A lot of wireless technologies. When you deal with wireless technologies, you've still got to deliver ultra reliability, so there's a lot of complexity in doing that. The clinically useful data and insights, and we'll spend another minute on that, but there's no point in having all of this technology and delivering 10 times more alarms and alerts to the carers. You would just kill them with fatigue on those alerts. And so a lot of the work goes into suppressing triggers and only delivering what is critical data or a critical alert and so on. And lastly, of course, standards compliant. There's a world of those in this space. 4607, 3811, 27,000 little cybersecurity standards, and it's only getting more. So this is how we would articulate what the right system looks like. And just from a dashboard point of view, the sort of data that you're after is data that can give you the KPIs you need to run your business on, where all the alerts responded to in 5 minutes. Was anything that lasted more than 15 minutes escalated to the RMs, etc. At a glance, can I see that happen? What's the data that I need for my clinical team? Are they getting up? Are they able to assess their interventions using the data? Are they able to have discussions with the family using the data? It's much easier to justify an increase in a paid care service if you can prove using the data that mum is increasingly pressing the alert button and is increasingly going to to toileting, for example, which is an indicator of UTIs, just as an example. So the use of this data enables you to be a deliverer of care, right? And that's to James's point earlier. You have a choice, particularly if you're moving from RV or you're contemplating taking an RV model into a high care model to either facilitate by partnering, which is a legitimate strategy, or delivering it yourself and putting your arms around it. And that, I guess part of what we're trying to demonstrate to the industry is that the data's there to help you deliver. If you want to deliver, the systems are getting there. They're getting there to the point where you have the confidence that you're getting the data you need to be able to run these. And AI is only going to make it more so. A couple of quick examples of using that data, because that was part of what Chris asked us to do. Data to maintain or to support clinical risk management. It's just one example. It's mock data, but it reflects real life data. This is indicative of an individual with dementia in the community. And you can see the loads of the alerts and alarms and triggers and sensors that are being applied to someone trying to manage them in that environment. Sleep, bed exits, alerts, door triggers, lots of, we'll have a resident who's opening and closing the doors hundreds of times, but never leaving, right? Because that's this is a pattern over 12 months. And you can see after the first 6 months, a steady decline in those alertings and then a stabilisation. This is the same data pattern, but on a 1 month basis each day. This is the early stage of it. This is chaos, right? This is care chaos. This is very, very frequent alerting, very, very frequent visitations from care staff. And this, one resident can drive 25% of those ad hoc alert events in a community as big as 200 or 300 people. So understanding where that is and how you're going to manage that. This is indicative of starting to see interventions, clinical interventions, for example, diversional therapies, where the person's taken out of the room for 3 or 4 hours in an afternoon. And you can see a much steadier sleep pattern now emerging in this is what they call a digital phenotype. It's what a person looks like in the digital world. And you can see those sleep patterns being much more stable. You get to the later stages of the disease, and unfortunately, you see a much more, looks like a stable pattern, but it's really just the progression of the disease. So the point being is the data is now available to you, the system's now available to you, the technology is really there where you can rely on it for that delivery of the resident care, provide you with indicators of agitation. You can assess your interventions. You can communicate clearly to the family. It's being used for the GP interventions to assist with medication management. Data is also great for the preventative interventions. These are again mock data, but patterns of simply motion in the bathroom, so toileting patterns. This is over a 14-day period. It's very peaky. The peaks are between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. Right? And these patterns are common across many across the wide cohort, if you like. And You can apply algorithms to that, and you can start looking for instances where someone's patterns change, and then you're doing proactive interventions against those changes. We know from trade studies in the US that this is a really good and low-cost way of looking for interventions, particularly with your independent living folk who aren't getting in your community. You'll have a segment that are low care. They're not getting regular visitations every day from the care team. You need to know that they're safe. And lastly, when you overlay our data from our platform, data from the care platform in terms of care delivery events, data from real-time location systems, we can actually start to get a bit of a 360-degree view of the resident. That's really for us sort of the holy grail of what we're heading here is if we can truly understand the combination of those things, it's really powerful. Chris did ask us to talk 2 minutes to the future of technology. It really is so much about AI at the moment, and there's lots of different ways of approaching it. We just want to get started. I've got a roadmap for 2 to 3 years. We are increasingly being asked by operators, where is AI in your platform? How's it being used? What's your guardrails? What's your governance, etc., particularly by the larger, more sophisticated operators. So it is very much at our doorstep as an industry, but still very early stage. This is McKinsey's data over 7 years of AI adoption, and their point is a couple of things. Firstly, all of the adoption in the last 18 months, which has been heroic adoption, has been driven by the generative AI, the Claudes, the ChatGPTs, the Geminis, the Groks. Most of the investment in AI is still by the large businesses, still by the big business, and the return on investment at the moment is very poor. So according to McKinsey, less than 10% of the large investors in AI are generating more than 10% of an improvement in their revenue or a 10% reduction in their costs. That's a really bad, it's a really bad investment. But it's still early days. They do say through the research that, and you'll find this if you survey your staff, millennials in your are already adopting it. They're already using it. If you don't think you've got AI being used in your organisation today, it will be. The folk who are probably struggling with it most are the folk who are being forced to use it, the sales folk and software developers. They're the ones who've got the least positive view on AI at the moment, partly because they're being the first users of any technology, don't get the best experience, but also because of fear for their jobs. So there's a real dynamic that's happening here. It's embrace it would be our observation. We ran a little accelerator with a few CEOs of care clients and other organisations that we're involved with to get started on it. It's one way to do it. I'd encourage you to find those kind of engagements to get started with it. It was really good. It was a great way for us to get from zero to, the zero to about 10, 20%. And I think even just doing that exercise, we were probably propelling ourselves into the top sort of 5 to 10% of the users' environment participated in this. It was a really good exercise. And at the end of it, we spent a day on, it was over 4 weeks. We spent a day on how you would use AI to make a change and deliver a use case in your business today. And it was across customer experience, operational efficiency, staff experience, and business strategy. And this is just a few of the cards that were put up in response to that. And one of them that was then worked on in the case of aged care was a streamlined care planning process. Recognising that onboarding someone is a arduous, painful, survey-driven, lots of data, but the way we collect that data today is very manual and mandralic. Death by survey was described as. If we could just bring together all the data that already exists on that person who's being onboarded, if we could bring the residents' GP records, the care assessments that have already been done, the families' views and all this on the resident, bring all that together at first, and then ask much more pointed questions as part of the onboarding process. It can be faster and more efficient. And that was just one example of how you might use it to reduce your costs, onboard faster, save money, better experience. And it was mocked up in a day. That didn't connect to anything, didn't actually, couldn't have onboarded with it, but it really gave the management then a vision piece that they could take back to their organisation and share with their organisation. So I really encourage you to embrace it. Our last observation here is we are seeing this shift from where we were when we were talking about this back in 1920. It's an interesting model, private aged care, but not for us. It's too hard, we'll outsource it, etc. More to increasingly accepting that this is what the customer wants. We are going to deliver the care ourselves. I recognise that no one wants to go into institutional care to really the ideal outcome from a resident's perspective, which is, I want to live and die in my own home where I belong. Thank you.